Hi, I'm E.H. Ivins, the dad you wish you had, and this is the Dad You Wish You Had podcast. Before I get started today, just to remind those of you who did not see the inaugural podcast, make sure that you text me your questions as instructed on the screen in front of you, and I will answer any question about life like the dad you wish you had, since more than half of America grows up in a family with either a dad who isn't present, or a dad who has left, or a dad who is mentally checked out, or whatever the case might be. I'm here to fill that role for you. There is no question that you can ask me that I'm not going to be able to answer. I know that's partially arrogant to say it, but as the father of 4 successful adults and great-grandchildren, grandchild at this point, I'm hoping for grandchildren, sooner the better, but I know I look like an old man, but I'm only 63 and we have lots of time to have grandchildren. But anyway, to make a long story short, I hold myself out as an expert because I have great children, and not only do my children think I was a great dad, and not only does my wife think I was a great dad, but so do all of their friends. And so over the years, I've just decided to basically package the fact that everybody comes to me and calls me their second father, even when, I'm not even related to them. I'm the dad they wish they had, and so I'm the dad I hope that you wish you had. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. The last podcast, the first podcast, I talked about bad words, which was not a very deep and terrible subject, but let's go on to something much deeper. So, before I decided to launch this podcast, obviously, since I had no subscribers and no one following it, I had to go out and solicit questions. This was a question I got from a young woman who's in my morning dog group. Okay, so I belong to this group of people that sprang up during COVID. It's a group of people that get together. It's called the Los Olivos Dog Park Group. There's a Facebook page if you want to check it out, just to make sure I'm not making this up. And we all get together every morning with our dogs. I have a beautiful Airedale Terrier. Her name is Pepper. She's the sweetest, most wonderful dog in the world. Every morning we get up at 5:30 in the morning. We go out to the park by about 6:45 after we've had our breakfast and our first morning walk. We play with the other dogs off leash. They run around and they play, and the parents and the people talk to each other and they make friends. The dogs are friends, the people are friends, and there are no dues, just a spontaneous group that popped up at Los Olivos Park, a small city park in the center of Phoenix, Arizona, where I live. Anyway, so one of the young women in the group, who, by the way, immediately latched on to me as a father figure. There has always been something about me that particularly young people have always gravitated to. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'm happy for it. And she asked me a great question. More than a question, she related to me something that had just happened to her, and could I give her some advice? Here's the situation. She was dating off of one of the online dating apps. She met a man on an app called Hinge. Now, I don't pretend to know a lot about Hinge, and I don't know exactly how it works, but as she described it to me, it's a more modern version of Match.com, which I once went on years ago when it first came out, and just to see what it was like, and I could see that it was the hiding place in plain sight for people who lie a lot. Things don't measure up when I look at these online dating apps. I look at a picture and I look at an age, for example, male and female. I'm not pointing my finger at any one gender, and it doesn't match up 9 times out of 10. They'll say they're 35, but the picture says they're 55. So right away, people can say anything they want, and unfortunately, it would be nice to think we live in a world where nobody lies, but we live in a world where people do lie, but lie a lot. But I'm digressing. Let's get to the situation that this young woman found herself in. And we're going to call her Anne, which is her real name, but no last name, and that's generic enough that no one's going to be able to identify her. So Anne had gone out on a date with this guy, and right away it went great. It was one of those great dates that we all wish we could have, where everything seemed to click. There was a lot of mutual attraction. She felt very attracted to him. She felt, was very attracted to her. And he became very, very intimate, and I don't mean that in a sexual way, but I mean in a emotional way. It became an intimate conversation right away, and he began talking about the future right away from the first date, as if everything had clicked perfectly and it was love at first sight. They had a wonderful first date. They went to the second date. The second date was even more wonderful than the first, and I'm shortening the story a little bit so we don't spend an hour here in the podcast. And he began talking about going away for the summer, and he has a cottage in the San Juan Islands in Seattle, Washington, and would she go with him, and da-da-da-da-da. And she was really falling for this guy, and she felt that he was falling for her. Only on the second date, but, love at first sight. This is what she felt. She felt very connected. And then he went cold. He stopped returning her texts. He stopped talking to her. They made plans for a third date. He didn't give her any details of when the third date would be. It got up to the day of the third date, and finally she waited and waited and waited. She didn't want to drive him crazy with text, but like 3 hours before they were supposed to get together for this Friday evening date, she finally texted him and said, "Why haven't you told me where we're going?" And he snapped back at her and began accusing her of being a shrew or a harpy, which I know is kind of an obscure reference, but just basically a nag. Just leave me alone. Why are you bothering me? I'll let you know where you're supposed to meet me. Okay, which was obviously from the story I just told, a 180-degree turn from where things were going, and it left her hurt and confused and sad. And this is the story she told me, and she wanted to know what was going on here. And of course, that was the end of that, but she wanted to know, how did that happen? What had she done, was her question to me. What have I done that made him turn off on me so quickly? Okay, so here we go. And as the father of 2 daughters, I have seen this before. You were dating a betrayal freak. Now let me explain to you what's going on. Unfortunately, backing up, if you're going to use dating apps in particular, but in life in general, you're just going to have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince or princess, depending on who you're dating and whether you're gay or straight. But regardless, dating is dating is dating, regardless of your situation. And it's an unfortunate fact in life that unless you're incredibly lucky, unless you're the one in a million, like, for example, the actor, now director Ron Howard, who met his wife in high school, and they've lived happily ever after and raised wonderful children who are now stars themselves. I really enjoy the acting of Bryce Dallas Howard, just to name one of their offspring, and have this wonderful marriage that has lasted all this time. But the fact of the matter is, that's not the norm. That's just not the norm. And in order to find the person that you're going to end up with, again, male or female, you're just going to have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince or princess. So this guy was clearly a frog. And the first thing I told her was, this is not your fault. You were dating a certain psychology, and I'm going to explain it to you and who you were dating. So in case any of you have dated someone like this, again, male or female, but it's usually men that go the betrayal route, this is what you're going to find out. Okay. There are people out there who just expect to be betrayed. And there are a lot of men who are called misogynists, and I know that most of you know what misogynist means, but just for the sake of those that don't, I don't like to use 50-cent words without explaining them. It's men who hate women. And they hate these women for lots of different reasons, but almost always it comes back to they hate their mothers. And they almost always hate their mothers because their mothers betrayed them as a child badly. And almost always it has to do with some kind of child abuse. I would bet anything, that somewhere in this man's background, he was molested either physically, sexually, or psychologically, or 2 or all 3 of the above, okay? But he was molested in some way. And I'm going to also bet a lot of money that his mother didn't protect him, and therefore he felt betrayed by her, and that translated into hatred. Yada, yada, yada. He's an adult now, and what he's doing is recreating this in every woman he meets, okay? And this is what's happened to you. You have tripped into a betrayal freak, okay? So what happens is, the way to set up betrayal in anybody is to make promises that you have no intention of keeping. Okay, then people become completely confused, irritated, and ultimately they feel betrayed. And this is where these guys get off, is getting people to feel betrayed and then to act holier than thou, which is exactly the scenario that happened to Anne. Okay, so in this scenario, Anne dated this man. Everything looked great. He made lots of promises. He elevated her. He made her feel great as a woman. He made her feel sexy. He made her feel beautiful. He made her feel desirable. He made her feel everything a woman would want to feel in a relationship with a man. And then he pulled out the rug from under her, thereby setting up betrayal. Get it? So the answer to your question is, what did you do, Anne? Nothing. You tripped into a betrayal freak. This was not your fault. Now this brings me to a bigger issue that I want to bring up before I sign off today. So to begin with, those of you who have experienced this, there is no fixing a betrayal freak. And young women out there in general, you can't fix men. They're going to be who they are. And once they've been damaged, they're damaged. And this guy, the big clue here, by the way, was Anne is not a spring chicken. Anne is 41 years old, and she's dating a man who's nearly 50, and he had never been married. So if you're that old, and you meet a man who's gone through half his life at least and has never been married, this is a man who has a real aversion to commitment, and there's got to be a reason for it, and he's almost always going to be a broken person and a danger to deal with, okay? It's going to be very rare that a 50-year-old man has gotten to 50 without committing himself to a woman previously, or another man if he's gay. And even if he's ended in divorce, at least he's demonstrated an ability to commit. So when you meet somebody who's been, it's one thing to date a 21 or, a 20 or something year old who's never been married. It's another thing altogether to date a 50-year-old who's never been married. Okay, so that was the big warning sign. So frankly, if I were Ann, and I told her this, I would never date a man who hasn't either been divorced or widowed. I mean, frankly, it's just, you have to meet somebody who's demonstrated commitment. And maybe the commitment didn't work out for any number of reasons. It's innumerable, and I'm sure I'll get lots of questions about that as we go by on the dad you wish you had. But in this case, she just tripped into a betrayal freak. He was hardwired to ruin her life, and the clue was he had never been married. Okay, so here's the lesson I want you all to take away from this. When someone shows you in the course of a relationship who they really are, the trick is to believe it and not blame yourself. In other words, everybody when they first start dating is on party manners, and everybody always shows everybody else. And I'm talking male, female, gay or straight. In any relationship, we all, in the early stages of a relationship, show each other who we think the other person wants to see. We do it involuntarily. It's not a lie. It's simply turning, if human beings are like diamonds with lots of facets, it's just turning the best of your facets and the best of your coloration and quality and clarity towards the person that you're dating so they can see only what you want them to see. But ultimately, will come a time in dating when something will happen and you'll see their real personality. So for example, and this is a very dramatic and negative example, but I'm going to use it simply to make this explanation easy. You're a young woman dating a man, everything's going along great, you've been dating him for a month, and then suddenly in the middle of an argument he slaps you. Bingo, that's the guy. That was not, okay, a mistake. He'll cry and claim on a stack of Bibles that he didn't mean it and it will never happen and he never, but no. That was the real guy sneaking out, and it's your job, your responsibility as the person dating someone who's just shown you, in this case, a violent side, a monstrous side, a man who would strike a woman, and there is no excuse for a man to strike a woman under any circumstances as far as I'm concerned, unless they're fighting against each other on two sides for two different countries in a war. Other than that, men don't touch women, period, end of story. If he has slapped you, okay, that was the real guy, and you need to run, not walk, away from him as quickly as possible. Now, and that was a dramatic example, but just remember the lesson and send me your questions. Remember, in the course of relationship, when someone shows you who they really are, the trick is to believe it and not blame yourself if it's something terrible and negative. In my case, when I was dating my wife and we were dating, and I had showed her my serious business side to begin with, but then she saw my goofy side. What slipped out was that she was over at my house. I'll just tell you a quick happy story. When things do turn out well, and I know I'm blowing my own horn a little bit, but she was a little intimidated by me. Terry was, that's my wife's name. Terry was very intimidated by me, and she had felt that I might be a little too much for her until she saw me with my dog. And I had a basset hound at the time, and her name was Junebug, and then she saw me get down on all fours with Junebug after we had been on a couple of dates, and she was over at my house. And there I was, giving my dog her 10 morning tissies and talking to her in baby talk, when Terry realized that my inner core, at my real center, I'm goofy. And that's when she fell in love with me, okay? And goofy is good, okay? Angry is bad. So again, believe it. So if you can find out good things about people, not just bad. Okay. I could go on and on and on because obviously at 63 years old I've lived a lot of life and can share a lot of stories, but I'm going to leave them for your questions another time. Remember, text me your questions. Please click on the subscribe button, click on the notification button, and let's grow together. I'm the dad you wish you had, and until next time, this is your Uncle Herbie signing off.